why should there be 9 companies in a category where we can bring it all together and solve it in one platform? And that was like really bad advice that we maybe took on as a company early on. And
interesting.
I think the one thing that we've always done at our company is to listen to the customer problem and then come back with a really rapid prototype, like one that you can build in 3 or 4 days, like with a Figma prototype, even like a clickable wireframe. And if you can take that to enough prospects of yours and get their feedback and then iterate from it, that's always been really helpful to us.
Yeah. I'd be so curious how you two, when you think back to your earliest customers, how you cracked it, how you landed those first logos.
We were just like, look, we want to be one dog with one servant. I think that's a saying. We're going to sell to providers, we're going to solve problems for them, and they're going to pay us, and we're going to make life easy and make life simple.
Yeah.
Can you two both talk about the journey of integration?
Really difficult.
Any other advice you'd give to founders who are trying to close their first few customers?
I think have fun, I think it sucks mostly, right? The whole thing kind of sucks.
If you both had to start a company again from scratch today, is there anything you'd do differently?
I think I right now envy a lot of companies that like stay bootstrapped for 1 or 2 years before raising capital, because
I am so pumped to be here tonight with 2 incredible founders who are building 2 of the fastest growing healthcare startups in New York City for all the real talk on how they've scaled Adonis and Tennr. And selfishly, I wanted to put together this panel so I could learn myself. Quick show of hands, because I know we actually ran out of lays at one point. How many founders are in the audience? Nice. A big founder crowd. How many aspiring founders? Secret founders. Okay. Product folks. Nice. Engineers. And then, of course, we had to give some love to the investors, some of our yellow lays in the audience. Awesome. Okay. Well, so a few themes I hope you get away from tonight. One is that starting a company will not be a straight line, and hopefully you guys can back me up on that. And most importantly, even with the most successful companies, there's going to be lots of hard things about hard things. So thank you to both Akash and Trey for keeping it real. Akash Magoon, CEO and co-founder of Adonis, revenue cycle management platform. You've raised a ton of money from great investors like Point72, General Catalyst, processing over 100 million claims annually. I'm sure that number is also going up. And then Trey Holterman, CEO and co-founder of Tennr, intelligent automation workflow platform around patient referrals, and have also raised a ton of great money, including a very recent Series C round. So thanks so much for being here. Let's dive in. I think so much of what we see with these shiny headlines from TechCrunch is that you guys are all up and to the right, and that everything must be going really well. But as early stage investors here at Workbench, the thing I love nerding out on is all the really hard shit about the early days, and what that looked like. We call it the sinusoidal chaos curve of finding product market fit, finding conviction, and so forth. So would love to start with the founding story. Both of you actually are software engineers by training. Akash previously at Cedar, at Enigma.
She just guessed that because we couldn't make eye contact when we got up here. Fair enough.
And then Trey at Strava and Health IQ, which I just think is so funny. It's a very interesting similarities. What is the one thing that about both your founding stories that you think most people don't know?
Well, thank you for having us, I think.
Yeah, kick off, go off.
And also, since we have some investors here, everything is up and to the right, and it is all sunshine and rainbows. And David Haber, you can see yourself out, but thank you for coming. Thank you for having us. Hope everybody has beer. I accidentally ripped my pants right before I got here. This is going to be tough. This is going to be long if you're in this vicinity direction, so just eye contact here. What was the question again?
Founding story. What is something about your founding story you think most people, even, I know you have a lot of Tennr folks in the audience today, that they wouldn't even know?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm a second-time founder and have been lucky enough to start both companies with my brother. As Jessica just mentioned, our current company uses AI to automate the way that medical providers process their claims. But the way I actually fell into this problem was actually through our first company. Our first company that we started in 2019 was focused on helping everyday Americans pick their benefits during open enrollment. If you're thinking about the average American picking benefits, you're picking between 7 to 10 medical plans, 3 or 4 dental plans, life insurance, and maybe an HSA versus 401k. And so we were building our first company for 3 years, primarily through the pandemic. And while we raised $100 million to solve that problem and built a business that over 10 million Americans used, it wasn't until the third year of the business where I happened to get into a shoulder injury playing basketball in a New York City-based league. And I just spent the last 3 or 4 years building a company to educate Americans on benefits and insurance. And now it was my turn to go get surgery and get a prior authorization and approved for a claim by Aetna. And I was having such a hard time figuring out how to actually get approved. And so while I ultimately did go through the process of getting the care I needed, I just realized that the next problem in healthcare after picking benefits is actually the medical journey, and been really excited about solving the problem at revenue cycle. But the one thing that I think is really interesting is that when you're moving from your first company to a second, people think things get a lot easier. Like
I know, I was so curious. I was like, you knew all the things, right?
Yeah, so like I'd say there's some things that become easier, like maybe like recruiting or getting a network of VCs, but the proof points that you need to share or post are higher than ever before, and the shoes are a lot bigger to fill. And so it's been fun building for the second time.
Yeah,
you
it's
raised
interesting.
$100 million on the first company?
Yeah.
Jesus.
I know.
You guys just announced a $100 million round, so.
Yeah, hoping it's the last time I have to do that. I don't want to do it again.
I mean, I think that's interesting about second-time founders. We meet a lot of them, and they almost the second time around know how hard it is, and so they actually are a lot more deliberate and diligent about like what space do I go into. And so again, it sounds like for you there was a very personal pain point that you're like, I know to solve this. Did you feel like the product market fit therefore was like way more clear and nailed down?
Yeah, for sure. Before we exited our previous company to move on to the next one, we had spoke to like dozens and dozens of CFOs of healthcare practices and hospitals to validate the pain points, and everyone was basically telling us that their revenue cycle check engine light was on, they're leaking over 10% of their top line, and it felt like the fire was burning and someone needed to put it out.
Yeah. Trey, I know your co-founder had a similar kind of health kind of story as well, but maybe you can give us the real story too.
Yeah, no, I mean, he did, but one of the things I was talking to somebody right before this, which is that like most, at least from my perspective, telling origin stories, I tell a different one every time based on the audience. Thank you for laughing. Anyway, we're off to a tough start here. Maybe we can bring some of the drinks closer. So we kind of had joint experiences, and so we sort of argued over what should be our origin story. So my mom was in family medicine. She's sending out patients, and she describes it. She's like, Trey, you want to solve a problem, sending patients feels like I'm sending them into a black hole. Patients aren't getting contacted. I'm not getting contacted. I don't know what's happening. Solve that problem. And so we literally marched our little butts over to the Black Hole Imaging Center, as we called it at the time. And we were like, look, if we can just solve this problem for you, solve this problem for my mom, she'll keep sending you patients. And we basically effed up everything you could possibly imagine. And the stress of being such idiots for such a prolonged period of time does things to your GI, inflammation. And so my co-founder, I'm not kidding, gets hospitalized from stress.
Oh my God.
And I don't think we're recording this. We don't have any cameras here. So he gets hospitalized. Takes him 6 weeks to get contacted by the GI that they referred him out to. And we're like, okay, this might actually be a problem. By the time he gets contacted, he's like, stomach doesn't even hurt that bad anymore. Doesn't go in. 4 weeks later, hospitalized again, died on the spot. I'm just kidding. That was a joke, sorry.
Cue laughter, please, everyone.
So, and that's how I got 100% board ownership. I'm just playing around. No, and so, you know what? We couldn't decide whose story was better, so we split the difference, and we have to tell both, and it wastes a ton of time. But, we're happy to be here.
I mean, I think, again, thank you for the real story. I mean, I read parts of it, but not the whole thing. Yeah. And I think it sounds like, obviously, having some experience from your mom, but then obviously this experience, literally near-death experience from your co-founder, helped you just narrow in and zoom in on product market fit. I think that is oftentimes, for so many founders we talk to, product market fit is that dark forest that they're going through. They have a hypothesis, but it's not, it's perhaps not always very clear what if there's enough market pull, right? And so I know I asked both of you, like, when do you feel like you knew you had product market fit? Was it after you talked to your 50th, user who said, hell yeah, we'll buy this? Was it earlier on? And any advice to the folks in the room as they're going through this dark forest of product market fit?
I'll say that in healthcare technology across in our first company, we made the mistake of coming up with an idea and then kind of going in a garage for 3 months and building up until and it wasn't until after we built V1 where we went to customers and pitched them out what we were building, and we got a lot of great feedback. But the feedback was pretty unanimously critical of our product, and we realized we just spent the last 3 months building something that we now need to mostly scrap and rebuild again. And so I think the one thing that we've always done at our company is to listen to the customer problem and then come back with a really rapid prototype, like one that you can build in 3 or 4 days, like with a Figma prototype or even like a clickable wireframe. And if you can take that to enough prospects of yours and get their feedback and then iterate from it, that's always been really helpful to us. But to answer your question directly around when did we feel like we had product market fit, I think it was when in our sales cycle, we have different funnels of our sales cycle. It's when it felt like the prospect was pulling us along in the sales cycle as opposed to us pushing them along. And so they're advancing to the next step. They're asking us for ROI. They're sharing data with us to allow us to come back to them with a more granular pricing proposal and moving us through the sales funnel.
Yeah, again, the push and the pull, right? We've heard founders describe it as you'll know it, right? It's something you can viscerally feel. I'm curious, were you pretty spot on when it came to your ICP person, your first target, buyer? Because again, healthcare, there's so many different places you can start, whether it's the payer side or the provider side, and so were you able to narrow in pretty quickly in that first pass or go around?
No, I feel like we're still iterating on the ICP. Healthcare is such a big landscape across practice groups and MSOs and dental practices and vision and hospitals, and within hospitals there's 9 different types of hospitals, and so over time we continue to identify what are the different segments of the market where we're getting the most pull. But it's an ever-changing thing, and as you can speak to, the TAM's so large, and being able to identify where your service addressable market is at any given moment in time is really important.
Yeah, you had written to me, healthcare has so many problems which can be distracting. Knowing where to focus is the hardest thing. And so with the team, has it been hey, this is our focus for this next quarter, let's iterate on it. If it doesn't work, let's move on. Anything tactical there?
Yeah, when we were first starting Adonis, which was in 2022, I feel like it's when Parker Conrad was coming out with a lot of Y Combinator content on building the compound startup, which is why should there be 9 companies in a category where we can bring it all together and solve it in one platform?
Yeah.
And that was really bad advice that we maybe took on as a company early on. And
interesting.
We just we'd raised a lot of capital early, maybe $20 million in the first year of our company, and tried to allocate that towards solving a bunch of different problems, and realized that we were maybe good at a bunch of things but not great.
Yeah.
And so reeling that back in and identifying where's the biggest issue and going deeper is where we've found ourselves to be more successful.
I think that's such an important hot take. I mean, obviously a lot of people have listened to obviously Parker's compound advice and try to build that, but I think to your point, the risk is that you will not be great at any one thing. You'll be probably good or somewhat good across a lot. So it sounds like from that you wound back and really focused into be best of class on certain parts of the platform.
Yeah, and if you look at any of the big tech companies, I feel like Amazon try to get into healthcare, Google's try to get into healthcare, and unfortunately those companies can't solve smaller sliver of problems like we can, because creating a $2 or $3 billion company for us is pretty meaningful, but creating a $3 billion market cap within Google for Google's health team is not that exciting for them. And so they have came in and tried to build the compound startup internally at Google or Amazon. They've all failed. Yeah. And I think healthcare is a very humbling category to try to distribute your product into.
I feel like that's the tweet of the night. Healthcare is a very humbling category. And we'll talk about distribution in a second. Trey, you also wrote too, though, cutting the non-product market fit stuff, in terms of just focus. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, no, I was having fun watching you guys do it. I was like, damn, yeah. When you say I'm a bad fundraiser, this is why. This is a guy who can actually answer questions well. Yeah, I mean, my quick and dirty 2 cents on it is that so many of these things, it's remarkably easy to sort of I can look back and say, oh, that was the moment. And then people are looking for it constantly left and right, when you're in the moment. And I think the kind of key takeaway is that most of the time you have no clue what's going on. And I try to we try to normalize that a little bit, where when every time we fundraise, there's always some question that we don't have the answer to.
Yeah.
And when it's early stage, it's like most questions you don't have the answer to.
Right.
And so I think, you get kind of like obviously now you know your ICP, now you know your strategy, all these things, but kind of early on, you don't really know. So what do you do when you don't know? We made the mistake, like everybody does. You say yes a lot of different places. You say yes a bunch of different ways. And we had said yes in 3 main ways. We had like 3 main use cases. And we actually got to like $1 million ARR. We're like, great. We're killing it.
We're on it. Yeah.
And I knew we were going to get it. So 2 months ahead of time, I ordered these custom Converse shoes. In an 11-person team, I ordered these custom Converse shoes with $1 million inscribed on the side. I forgot about that. I then go and I tell everybody, we're cutting, I think it was $800K of our $1 million. We're not going to focus on it. And it's not that it wasn't obvious that we shouldn't focus on that. It actually was really obvious. You could feel it. It was like burning. But it was really hard to do that. And then we did that. And then a big box came for us in our WeWork. And I remember the next day opening up and just feeling like the biggest idiot in the world holding these $1 million shoes. They were like $80, but they said $1 million on it. And so that was sort of the like cut period where we're just like, nope, this is what we're going to go do. We're going to go all in on this. Kind of the same thing where you're just like, you're doing too much. Thinking you can say yes to everything. You cannot. And it's amazing. Like we now think we can do probably a little bit less than we even probably thought then with that 200K. But you go so much deeper, do so much better, figure out why it matters, etc.
I think that's such a great takeaway. Again, like oftentimes founders want to say yes to everything. We see that a lot, and it sounds like for both of you, like focus is so important.
But probably not too early, right?
Yeah.
So it's like maybe, but maybe not, right? Maybe we would have picked the wrong 200K. Like totally plausible. You focus too soon, now you're screwed. Yeah. You focus too late, you're screwed.
Yeah.
That's what like the thread in the needle might be on the focus category. But I think all of these things, it's like your gut will tell you,
And was your gut from the customers specifically?
It was from like, it was just everything. It's so like whenever something's like really hard to do, like cutting most of your revenue and putting your tail between your legs, it's actually quite obvious and almost like it. You just don't act on it.
Yeah.
It's like, I got this VP of marketing. No, I'm just kidding. She's right there. That was a joke, bad joke. She's killing it. I can only say that because she just dropped this awesome commercial and it's incredible. So check out that commercial. The commercial is really good. It's called Fax It. It's hilarious. It's called Fax It, yep.
Anyways, okay, awesome. Well, so actually let's move on to product, right?
Sorry.
Because so many people, a lot of PMs here, and funny enough, when I asked you both what was the first real shit moment you both ran into when it came to building product, you both wrote integrations. And so I think anyone and everyone who works in healthcare can appreciate that, and I see a lot of head nodding. Can you two both talk about the journey of integrations? I don't believe there are any shortcuts, but maybe any learnings, any advice you give when it came to, build integrations.
Yeah, as earlier on in my career, I was a software engineer and was lucky enough to work at like cloud companies or finance companies or fintech companies. And in those categories, APIs and data availability and standardized data schemas is a very commonplace thing. And you don't really think twice about that as an engineer. And when we entered healthcare, we kind of assumed that was the case. And so a couple of minutes ago, I was talking about going out to our earliest customers and pitching them Figma prototypes on what we wanted to build and trying to get them bought in and ultimately signing a contract and then going and building it. And the thing that we underestimated the most was integrations, where integrations for us is integrating with EHRs and then health insurance platforms. But the EHRs, there's like maybe 8 or 9 of them that make up 70% of the market. Yeah. And there's probably like another 1,000 that make up the long tail of the other 30%. And none of them are really consistent. Everyone thinks it's like a FHIR data standard, but even the FHIR data standard isn't really standardized across systems. And so integrations have been really, really humbling. And we spend probably like 30% of our R&D budget right now on integrations. Yeah. Where we're trying to get APIs from some, data warehouses from others. Sometimes we're screen scraping. Sometimes we're exporting reports via RPA and ingesting that, and it just continues to be really, really difficult.
Yeah, sounds like there's no shortcut, unfortunately, yet for integrations.
Yeah, I like to say, like, you will know that AGI has dominated and taken over the world, not when your wife is a robot, not when your children eat pills, But when I can type into a simple interface and generate an integration into Epic,
Yeah.
that's when AGI will have taken over the world. All those things will probably come sooner, too. Yeah. That's my take.
I mean, is there anything you do differently? Again, you're investing over almost 30% of R&D. I mean, any advice for the founders who are about to undertake the healthcare journey and no way, shape around integrations?
Yeah, I was at a conference yesterday in the Midwest, and I met a founder who has been working on his business for 18 months. They went from like 0 to 3 million in revenue, and I learned that he'd built a platform that I had assumed he'd built an integration into EHRs, and he told me that he'd just built a standalone platform, and he kind of led into it. Versus like us early on in our business, when we'd get asked questions about integrating, we'd almost like fake it until we make it, and we pitched a very like tightly coupled product with EHRs, and so I think there's an opportunity to like build standalone platforms that aren't maybe as heavily reliant on data from other platforms.
Sweet. Okay. I will now move into go-to-market because I do think so many founders that we meet in healthcare, yes, of course, you want to build great tech. Integrations will be really hard. But at the end of the day, so much of it comes down to the business model, comes down to who's going to pay for the platform between payers and providers and so forth. So I'd be so curious how you two, when you think back to your earliest customers, how you cracked it, how you landed those first logos, and hearing the war story there.
For us, it was kind of interesting because we sit in the middle of a network, there was like every possible midwit opportunity to take the data, sell it to some pharma companies, take the data, sell it to some payers, take the data and create an API layer or something, or take your model. And we were just like, look, we want to be one dog with one servant. I think that's a saying. And so we're going to sell to providers, and we're going to make them we're going to solve problems for them, and they're going to pay us, and we're going to make life easy and make life simple. And that focus, when I think at the time there were a couple of other companies that had these much smarter, much more sophisticated business models, hard to believe, but they were effectively turning around and selling their data to payers, and so their product was free. And so we were competing against free. So we were getting laughed out of the room because we didn't have a free product, and they did because they were smarter than us. But then what happens? 6 months later, you're building for the person that's paying. You're not building for the person that's using your product, that's demanding functionality. And so now, we're a year and a half later, and people hate that product because you just don't compound the learnings. You build just a data aggregation tool as opposed to like an experience that drives some outcome for a customer that's paying you. So I think my sort of quick and dirty on this is just like should be simple. Maybe not. But for us, it had to be simple.
And when you think about those first customers, again, it was a wide open field, it sounds like, that you could go after, but it's almost like, again, how do you focus and figure out which segment or which buyer or which group to land on? Was it very obvious, your hypothesis, to go after first? And have you since then, it sounds like, obviously expanded beyond, imaging centers into health systems and hospitals? I think that's a lot of what founders think about is like, who do we go after first and prioritize? And then from there, how and when do you move up market, perhaps?
I think you're right. Like in the earliest days, you say yes to a lot of things. It's almost like you're out fishing in the ocean, and you can pick up lobster, you can pick up shrimp, you can pick up tilapia or whatever else fish that you want. But then over time, you need to figure out, all right, what's the one fish you're going to get really good at, or the one or two. And so I feel like earlier, like maybe the first 12 months of our company, I was the one always saying yes to a bunch of things. And now everyone makes fun of me at the company because I say no to a lot of things, and I feel like I need to be the cop in the room.
Yeah.
But I think for us, it was all about in the early stage, we threw out a wide net, and then we realized that there was a certain type of customer where we had the biggest ROI. So a couple of minutes ago, you asked about how do we pitch ROI to customers, and for anyone that's like tracking the world of like AI agents, I think the biggest driver of ROI that you can show is reducing headcount.
Yeah.
And pitching a headcount reduction in a sales cycle is really difficult because while maybe the C-suite is the one that's going to sign the contract, you usually have like a VP level or a director level that's going to be your quarterback, your champion. And that's usually the person that like manages a lot of the people that you're going to displace. And historically in corporate America, people view their power as like the number of people that report to them. And so it's been a chicken and egg trying to figure out how to best pitch that to groups. But we've been trying to be like somewhat soft about it with like the mid-level, but then be very direct and blunt about it with the more senior folks that we meet with.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'm sure a lot of people in the room right now are experiencing that, pitching AI, pitching ROI, and figuring out the messaging there, because to your point, I don't think most people want to buy software that cuts headcount, but it's helpful to hear kind of the real talk from you that it is a fine balance.
Yeah. One of our primary customers are like PE-backed healthcare roll-ups.
Yeah.
So if you guys go to like a local dermatologist or an orthopedic doctor, chances are that they're private or very slim. They're actually like owned by like a PE umbrella, and those PE groups are like very cutthroat. They're like very EBITDA driven. They're very much figuring out how to cut costs, increase top line revenue, and then flip the business to the next PE sponsor like 3 or 4 years later. So we're finding that there's some people that resonate with it, but then if you talk to like your local academic medical center like NYU Langone, they're part of what's it called when you can't? They're part of unions. And so a lot of union organizations actually can't replace headcount. And so then it's like, holy shit, I just built a AI platform to reduce headcount. How do I pitch a group that can actually fire their people? Yeah. And so it's something that you have to figure out the right narrative depending on who you're talking to.
I'd love to talk pricing and packaging because I think that's also a big question we hear a lot from founders. How do we think about pricing and packaging? There's many ways to slice and dice it. I think the two of you actually have some similarities in terms of like a base subscription fee and then some sort of usage on top. Can you share any lessons learned in terms of getting to that pricing model?
Well, I think the comforting thing is that just like all things, you can basically completely mess this up and you'll hire a great sales leader someday that'll fix it and clean up your mess. So it doesn't really matter. But, if you want to do it right from the beginning, you're still going to do it wrong. But if you were to, I think this is just tried and true right now, which is like, that base platform fee. This is what you're going to get. You get this customer success person. They're going to make sure you're successful. We're going to implement you. Maybe low professional services if we got to train some of your team. And then volume, volume. Try to get usage in there. This is not new. I mean, this is more of like Frank Slootman, big legend of volume pricing when he went to Snowflake. He would diss a lot of the ServiceNow seat-based pricing. It's not to say that it's always wrong, but volume does feel nice and fair.
Going back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, we've been trying to price on both what percentage of top-line collections can we help our customers achieve that they weren't otherwise collecting, and then how much of the headcount can we reduce. That's been working pretty well for us, but it does keep me up at night because right now, if you're able to charge, let's say you're able to reduce $1 million of headcount spend with your platform, and maybe you can charge a fourth of that, so a 4x ROI at $250K. 4 years from now, when AI models are running at maybe 1/100th of the cost right now, you might come into a commoditized issue where other people are coming into the market trying to get that same contract at a much cheaper rate. So it does keep me up at night a little bit, to be honest. But right now, we've been trying to drive pricing based off of value.
Nice, awesome. Any other advice you'd give to founders who are trying to close their first few customers, specifically on selling to healthcare customers?
I think have fun, I think it sucks mostly, right? The whole thing kind of sucks. The vast majority of times you're just like, man, this is not that fun. This is not that cool. It's not that chill. Why do I have to listen to this guy here? I just want to talk to the seed investors that are around. That sucks too, right? So what do you do when something sucks? You figure out how to make it fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So figure out how to make it fun. You can have a conversation where the objective doesn't have to be, I would start basically every sales call at the beginning being like, look, I'm not going to pretend like I've got something good here yet. But I got 30 minutes. You got 30 minutes. You're the idiot that signed up for a phone call here. So let's pick 30 minutes and let's have some fun. And let's talk about the most important things to your business. And let's talk about how we're seeing the world. And if there's some intersection, I'm going to harangue you. And if there's not, I'll go my way and never talk to you again.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people we've never talked to again.
Yeah.
And you get nice emails from them later being like, thank you for not haranguing me.
Yeah.
I just say, stop haranguing me.
Yeah.
I heard you're going to be at Comedy Cellar performing this weekend.
Catch Trey at the Comedy Cellar tonight at WM. Yeah. I mean, I think you're spot on there too, which is just, if it's not a good fit for either of you, we shouldn't pretend it, right?
We should, and also you can break the fourth wall. Just break the fourth wall. You know what I mean? It's
we all know.
We would puff up our chests, and then later we have a customer yeah, we knew you were 3 people. That was cool. That was fine.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have a little bit more fun if you don't pretend like you got the whole thing figured out.
Yeah.
And you're like, look, we're getting started. We're exploring. We're experimenting. I'm not going to BS you. Somebody else might. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And you get a trusted partner that way. So much more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Akash, anything to add?
Yeah, for our earliest customers, we almost like thought about our team as an extension of theirs, and so we bear hugged our earliest customers. Two of our earliest customers were based in Georgia, and so our entire team is based in New York. At one point in time, we had like all 9 of us down in Georgia, like at their office for like 2 or 3 days in a row at a time. So we always thought about our customers as an extension of our team and vice versa. And similar to how you might be hiring for someone to join your team, like based off of culture fit or the types of things that you'd want to do at your company. We like in hindsight, our earliest customers were like really great culture fits for us because every time they had a problem internally, they shared it with us as if like we're sitting right next to them and we're part of their team. So that's like the first thing. The second thing is there was this piece of advice that I got from one of our seed stage investors, which is treat every customer like your only customer. And I like to think that a lot of our customers probably feel that way. But being able to just say yes to a lot of things and also offer things that are a little bit more bespoke to your earliest customers goes a really long way. Because at the end of the day, like the places that your customers pull you end up being like the things that maybe somebody else entering the space for the first time won't really know from the outside in.
Yeah, I love that. Treat every customer like it's their only customer. Okay, I actually only have one, or I guess 2 last questions, and then I really want to open up the floor to everyone. Lots of great healthcare, smart people here. But if you both had to start a company again from scratch today, is there anything you'd do differently? Anything you double down on?
There's, I think I right now envy a lot of companies that like stay bootstrapped for 1 or 2 years before raising capital, because you get a lot of pressure when you like raise like a big seed round, for example, to move in different directions at a certain pace that you maybe otherwise wouldn't. And so I see like some peer founders that are like really calm and collected for their first 1 or 2 years, and they're being very prescriptive around where they want to go, and they find the market pull and then go and raise capital. And I think that's the right time to bring in capital because you can go and pour it on the right fires that are burning, pour the fuel on the right fires that are burning. We raised money like really early in our business, and again, we made some mistakes along the way, but that's probably like one thing I'd reconsider. And I'm saying that at an event hosted by a seed fund. And I think there's still a place and time for a seed round, but doing it at the right time when you know where exactly you want to spend the money is going to be really important.
I mean, I would totally agree with you. Just to be clear, like we totally agree. Like the more that you can hold off, the more you can do all this customer and user discovery way early on, figure out some semblance of the early product market fit. And then know very clearly what you use that seed round funding for. I mean, we're 1,000% in the same bucket as you. And you're right. I mean, as soon as you raise funding, like the shot clock starts, right? Whether you like it or not. And so many different ways to obviously go about and start companies, but I couldn't agree more with you.
The question was, what would you do differently?
If you were to start all over again, especially given lots of
I would just keep trusting that gut. You know what I mean? Nobody is putting in the hours that you are. Nobody's seeing what you're seeing. And there's so few times that you get that gut pull, and you're right. You know, you're probably right. Like, and because
unless you're wrong, and then
unless you're wrong, but like your gut. If you're good, your gut's not going to get that strong if you're wrong. You know what I mean? Like when I say
unless you have a GI problem.
Unless you have a GI problem. That's
Full
the problem.
circle.
You make too many gut decisions. But it gets. There's some things that are so glaringly obvious. You know what I mean? That it's like. And the glaringly obvious things are going to be glaringly obvious, and it's going to be hard, not because it's hard to see, because it's hard to like do anything about it. And that's the friction you have to overcome. Is like, I was wrong, you know, I bit off more than I could chew. We can't do this thing, or like, you know, whatever. And it's going to feel so obvious, and you're going to see it, and you're going to do something about it. That's one of the big things I would do a little bit differently. And then also, just like, before you go into sort of a hiring bender, just like take stock of like what the experience is going to be like for those employees. Even if it's for seed round, hell yeah, going to hire 6 people. Just take stock of like what are those people walking into, for better or worse. It can be crappy, but you know, is there music playing? Is it smooth? You know, she's trying to get me off. But like, you know what I mean? Like, is it a good experience for the people joining in that 2 weeks? Because it's just like they remember that forever. And this is less like something I would do differently, but I'm very proud of the way that we did that with all of our early employees. Just like thought about it obsessively. Like, what is this going to experience like? And that has paid a lot of dividends.
Yeah. Akash, I'll just mention one thing in a note you had written to me, which is that you might have earlier on mixed in more early hires that had industry experience. Can you talk about that balance? Again, in healthcare, do you try to hire people who have come from this world, who have experience in this world? Yeah,
I think just given where my like personal network was when I was first starting our company, and even my co-founders network, a lot of it was from places that we had worked in the past. Which weren't necessarily always in healthcare. And so we brought in generalists that were really good at software engineering or really good at marketing or really good at sales. And more recently, when we've brought in maybe people that have been in the category for a longer time, they come in and understand the language a lot faster. And those like 1 or 2 people in engineering or 1 or 2 people in marketing that know the category and can speak the language and have spoken the language for a really long time, they end up teaching everyone else around them. And so I'm not saying you need your entire team to be like Epic, for example, but having a few of those people around the company can really elevate the literacy within the language that you speak. And so it could be in cybersecurity or any other category, but that's been something that has been more recently. It's kind of a recency bias, but more recently it's been really helpful for us.
I know I've hogged the mic for a long time. What questions do folks have?
Hey, I'm also a healthcare founder. Something that we think a lot about internally is just time to first value. I think one of the unique challenges that healthcare has across like other products or other categories is the time cycles for you to like do something with your product and then for them to see an impact, right, is so long. I would love for you guys to shed some light on how you try to manage that.
One of the things that our investors always ask us for when we're catching up with them is account executive payback periods. Like how fast can you hire a salesperson and then have them pay for themselves? And I remember we got that question asked for the first time in like our first seed stage board meeting, and actually didn't know what that metric was. And now we get asked that every single time. And very recently we were pitching a large hospital, and the CFO asked us, what's the payback period on the investment that we're making? And so now in every single contract we put out, or like slide for our ROI, we actually show our customers a graph of like, hey, this is how much you're spending with us, and this is what you can achieve to like hit break even on the contract. And we've now been taking that to other clients and prospects, and it's been something that they've all very much appreciated. But we're seeing like a break-even period somewhere between like 6 to 9 months, because integrations can take a long time to take your customer live. But once you take them live, we find that the ROI can be like pretty quick after that.
Is the 6 to 9 months include the integration and onboarding, or is that assuming after the fact?
No, it's 6 to 9 months from like signing of the contract to, and then the time to go live, and then the time actually being live.
Okay, that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just focus on implementation timeline. Like there are rules, like you just go too long, you lose. Yeah, just fast. But maybe not. 9 months, that's long for us, but maybe that's good for you, right? Like, yeah, different game.
How long does it take for you to go live with a customer?
We're 90 days typically. 90 days? Yeah, 90.
90.
Yeah,
90.
yeah, that's
okay,
right.
cool.
Yeah.
Super helpful. Other questions?
Sounds like you guys are both selling into private equity-backed groups, and I was curious if you've found any hard-won lessons of whether you're going directly to the private equity companies themselves or whether you're going to the investors, and also whether you've seen any benefits of like network effects of going after a specific specialty. So Trey, for instance, I understand you guys focused on DME and maybe medical infusion first. Now you're broadening. How do you think about the benefit of focusing on one particular specialty and how you get awareness within that specialty after you land a few big deals?
Yeah, so one of the things was we actually started, we were in over 14 specialties originally. We sort of narrowed in on our 3 core ones, and then I've sort of fanned back out. Ultimately, that was like the number one advice that we always got was like partner up closely with a private equity firm. I don't think our style, maybe we just couldn't do it effectively, but I couldn't do it at least early on when I was trying to do most of our sales. So we just almost always sold direct to providers, and then sometimes you navigate and say, hey, introduce us to your partner, but like not always. We've had other folks enter the market and they like go with like the private equity first route, but then ultimately unless they're like a super hands-on operating partner, once they see the best products already in the market, they will pivot so fast that it's really like nothing really matters other than make sure your customers are super happy and it works as well as it possibly can for the business. It's a little bit, it's like like if you marketed to our investors saying, hey, try to get Tennr to use this tool, like it might be able to send an invitation, but like that's just one touch point often that doesn't really move the needle always for us. We usually need to get like deep buy-in across the C-suite of the team or the provider that we're working with. Although this is something that we're trying to do better, to be honest. Yeah.
I think it really depends on like the culture of the PE firm. So some PE firms that are like more mid-market, like a Warburg Pincus, for example, or Varsity Capital, who do a lot of like healthcare investing, we find that they're pretty like hands-on as operating partners and like to institute some like playbooks across their portfolio companies, but then others are a little bit more hands-off. I do find that for things that like every company needs, PE groups will try to like negotiate contracts with that group. So like Brex, for example, if one of these PE firms wanted to negotiate directly with Brex, they're likely to push that down to their groups, or maybe negotiate a contract with like a legal firm or accounting firm. But within our category, like RCM, I think it's like so unique business by business that they're like likely not to maybe institute a contract with us directly, but rather introduce us to the right person within their portco.
Yeah, it's usually like an intro. We haven't had much like top-down mandated. I don't know if you guys do, but yeah.
No.
Super helpful. We have one in the back.
How do you think about moats and competition? So what do you think are your kind of primary moats? And from a competition standpoint, do you think these are markets where you'll have 10 plus competitors, or it's going to dwindle down to you and maybe one or two others? How do you think of those two parts?
That's a very good question. Moats are very, very hot topic now in the age of AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think like talked about this a little bit before, but it's always like to operate on what is going to yield the best behavior if I believe. So if you believe, look, there's nothing novel about moats in this age of software, it's going to yield like the right behavior. In this case, you're going to focus relentlessly on workflow. You're going to focus relentlessly on investments that you can make into your product that somebody has to pay for. And if you pay for it once, you get massive benefit across, so that multiple startups trying to come into our industry are not going to spend the $10 million a year that it costs to afford maintaining medical necessity criteria across the number of specialties that we're doing. But at the end of the day, we look at it the same way you would look at any traditional software, which is how baked into the workflow really are you? What are your integrations? What is your stickiness? How do your customers determine ROI? What is the cost of replacement? Just all the kind of basic things. Try not to reinvent the wheel or speculate on how moats will like fundamentally develop. And also maybe presume just what if there was never a moat, and how would you operate with that in mind? Both sort of frames of mind I think work decently.
Yeah, I guess one follow-up question for you, Trey, is it sounds like your approach is to say, hey, look, we know everyone uses faxes as one of the workflows, and so let's not try to fundamentally change that behavior, and let's lean into that and say, like, if you use fax, like, you can still use Tennr. Like, I'm curious, like, was that approach really obviously driven by the customers, but when you think about your competitors, right, how similar or different is that approach, and how much of that is driven by, hey, this is what the 4 or 5 other people in this space are doing?
Well, 2 years ago, to be honest, everybody thought we were idiots because they were like, the fax is dead, the fax is going to die any minute now. And we were like, yeah, but like we see that like 90+% of patients are getting transferred to the e-fax. So we're not going to wait for some ridiculous like idyllic future to come around and sort of gut the fax, which is what everybody was doing prior to us. And still, literally still, people don't learn their lesson. You still see sort of marketing copy like, the fax is dead. It's like, no, the fax is not dead.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of numbers to show you that.
Yeah.
And so that was a case where I think we got lucky by just having some common sense. When in a space when nobody was sort of being commonsensical. Maybe we won't get lucky like that again. But what did that mean? It meant that we were like, fuck, there's like nobody building integrations into all these e-fax providers and all these email providers, and that's like a ton of spend and a ton of time to do, and now we have that. So that's great. But again, like maybe it's like sort of, you can sense it in a little bit of the tone. It's not that I'm, it's not that I think, our stuff don't stink. I think it's just that like you look back at some of these things and you're like, almost all the best decisions we made were because we didn't listen to advice.
Yep. We
sort of were just like thought about things from our first principles, and we thought about like, if you think about the opposite, where does that leave you? And for instance, presume there's no moats, and presume you can never build a software startup with a moat anymore. Well, then you're not going to build a software startup. And so that's not a very good belief to have, is it? And if you're going to compete with us, I hope that you believe that. You know what I mean? Because then you don't have to compete. Anyway, so my point is just like, what is the belief that you're going to hold, and how does that affect behavior? And for us, it was just like seeing things with our 2 eyes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, again, being very honest about the 2020 kind of story and the decisions it sounds like you made back then that might have been contrarian, but obviously it seems like some of it's paying off. RCM space, a lot of players. I'm so curious how you think about the world and how your team at Adonis thinks about competitors.
Yeah, I think moat is like a fixed thing around a castle that protects people from invading it. And in healthcare, I think that your competitive advantage changes over time. And so maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it was like how fast we're able to build integrations like we were talking about before. And now we see our moat being how quickly we can identify the changing goalposts of the payers and how they're going to be paying out claims to deploy agentic fixes for them. So it's like basically better machine learning models, and even that is like maybe a temporary thing.
Yeah.
But I think similar to what Trey shared, over time you'll just realize that ideas are easy, or at least ideas are easy, or everyone will catch up onto them. But execution is one of the things that maybe separates out good companies from great companies, and so we just try to be the best operators as we can.
Can I also, curious if you agree with this take, like, other things you were describing a literal moat, like moats are around castles. I don't see many castles castles are old, right? So the moat will matter in the long term, but that means you have a lot of time to figure out what that's going to be, right? And so, at the early days, we're just building like a nice little hut, right? You're not like thinking about the, sewage system around your hut. You're just thinking like, do I have a place to sleep at night? You know what I mean? And I do believe it's your job, right? As the investor, it's your job to figure out that sort of stuff. I think it's maybe the startup's job to figure out like what is valuable for the customer and like not think too far ahead, too much at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised as investors. I mean, this is obviously a very top of mind topic about moats and defensibility, and especially at seed, whether anyone has really a moat or is really defensible.
Nobody has a moat at a seed stage, right?
Exactly.
But you're probably looking like, do they have advantage to get to a moat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is real, I guess.
It really depends, I think, if it's a zero-sum game space, or is it a category that there's like a clear winner and then everyone else is like a laggard behind. Healthcare revenue cycle, and even in your space, I feel like has been a place where it's been dominated by services companies. And I personally think that there's a world where there's multiple software companies that win. But even within those different swim lanes of software companies, there's probably going to be one that's like a lot better than others. And how you keep others out is really important.
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe not important in the early stages of the company, but being able to plan ahead allows you to maybe build your team in a better way or build the technology in a better way.
Yeah.
People say that like the 0 to 10 million is like the hardest revenue you get, and then 10 to 100 is 0 to 10 is the easiest, and then 10 to 100 is a lot harder. I actually think the reverse is true, where when you go from 0 to 10, everyone in the market is like listening to you and looking at you and understanding how you're penetrating the market. And once you're going from like 10 to 100, there's so many like things that you need to put into place to basically combat all the competitors that you're seeing. And so we're, for the first time in 3 years, like seeing a lot of competitors that are using a really similar messaging to us and tackling the market in a very similar way.
Yeah, I know that's a huge problem. Again, like anyone could take your copy from a website in theory, right, and completely replicate it. And so the questions on defensibility are a really good one, and whether or not, and how do you combat that? And I think the best way, both of you said it, is just like execution. You just have to keep executing, keep building, keep shipping, and keep listening to your customers. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess like, what are your big bets? I mean, you just raised money, that's great, and kind of like you've seen a lot of growth. If you had to like consolidate into like a single bet that you're focusing your companies around, what would those be?
You want to go first?
That deep breath indicated I wanted to go. So, I mean, we do have like a fundamental product bet, but we're going to announce that, and that's cool. And it does touch on some of the moat stuff. I mean, we are, this is not, we actually do things. We bet like really small amounts on like the novel and interesting and like chaotic things, because they're probably going to be wrong, and like they're going to be wrong 90% of the time. And so maybe one interesting bet was like, we have a team that just does, my co-founder leads, that just goes after novel approaches using the same core building blocks of our models and our product and platform. And that's like a series of small bets. So it doesn't show up on the P&L and you're like, oh shit, that's scary. So the real big bets are just the lame things, The real big bet is that we have massive product market fit and the only solution on the market that's deeply integrated enough to drive the value that we point to. And when you have the gospel, you gotta spread it. And so that sounds lame, but that's what you like really spend that much money on. It's like sales reps and engineers. That sounds uninspiring, but that's because all the cool, inspiring bets are much smaller and not really like, you don't really need to raise so much money for.
I mean, it's a real talk.
I come from a computer science and machine learning background, so like the R&D has always been something that's felt very natural and at home for me. But the go-to-market side of like the CEO role is maybe like a newer space for me. And recently, there's been a lot of like the fundamental metrics that companies track within go-to-market that have been looking like pretty good for us. And so our investors are pushing us to now blitz on go-to-market. And so that's like a big bet that we're taking, where we're going to be spending a lot of money on all things go-to-market, so like events, branding, beefing up the sales team, investing a lot of tooling to make sure that we can send a message to our category very loudly, very quickly, almost like shifting the company into like land grab state. And the reason that's a little terrifying maybe is that it's going back to what we were talking about earlier around like there's the venture power law. It's like one company might return a fund of 20 companies. Oftentimes investors push you to be that company by like putting steroids in your company and making you spend in ways where you can either be like the 100x returner or you can maybe not raise capital again. And so we're like trying to figure out what the right balance is between putting money into sales and marketing versus trying to build a more kind of lean team as we've had historically.
I really appreciate the real talk on that one. Okay, John, last question.
Thank you. So you're both at you founded well-capitalized companies, you've got engineering backgrounds, and you've staffed teams already today with a product that has AI baked into the products that you're serving for your customers. How is AI changing the way you're thinking about building your products and building your teams over time?
One of the things that always blows my mind is when you log into LinkedIn and you see those like clickbaity posts where it's like, oh, it's like a 3-person company that has like 80 million in revenue. I feel like I've seen like 9 of those like clickbaity posts in the last couple of weeks. And so I think my honest answer to that question is like there's places that we're using AI internally to make our teams better, whether it's like Copilot to make our engineering team much more effective, or whether it's our sales team using like AI BDRs to figure out how to write messaging, or maybe even our marketing team using tools to write content better. We're finding maybe like 20-30% improvement in certain areas around throughput. But yeah, I think the companies that are just starting out that are doing a lot with like a team of 3, 4, 5, those are things that I'm still personally trying to get smart on and understanding how that model actually works.
I've come to this, like, I was so excited about, like, trying to do some of the stuff you were talking about early, like, when we were, like, 3 people, we're so efficient. And honestly, I really, really was. Like, when we were 3 people, we could book astounding numbers of meetings. We could, like, build incredibly fast. As we've gotten bigger, though, you sort of, like, realize you're like, damn, you know, whether or not you need 20, you know, you got to go from 20 engineers to 40 engineers, or 20 engineers versus 50 engineers, you still need a lot of engineers. So it doesn't really change what you do. You just, you know, you get that sort of, but it's hugely impactful. If you're like Amazon and you're like have 25,000 engineers and you're like, oh, we don't need to replace the 5,000 engineers that maybe attrit every 2 years. Like that has huge, massive implications. So I think in some ways, and then even the SDR front, I'm curious how you think about this, but like you realize I was like a never SDR person for a while because like, look, you can do all these things. But then you realize like SDRs are your best AEs. They become your best AEs. So you're like, oh shit, I don't want to like cheap out on this because I want them to become great AEs. And so many places where when you're trying to go super, super fast, you know, and this is ultimately like what got Silicon Valley in the danger zone in like 2021, is that the sort of incremental efficiency isn't always worth, you know, you're sort of like stepping over $1 to pick up a penny, penny, whatever. What is the thing?
The juice isn't worth the squeeze?
Nah, no, the penny pound. Stepping over a pound to pick up a penny. You know what I mean? Like there's so many moments like that where you're like stepping over a pound to pick up a penny, and it's like, you know, you get all these times. I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna like pay $20,000 more for this person, and it's like, shit, I thought AI was gonna automate this job, and then you're like 6 months later, and you're like, I wish I'd hired 3. You know what I mean? That happens so much more often than I'm like, man, like we don't need engineers anymore. So I'm ultimately glad I listened to folks when they were like, no, there's reasons why you do need people to do great work. Yeah.
Awesome. Can I get a huge round of applause for Trey and Akash? I've moderated a lot of panels over the years, and I have to say this definitely is hands down the funniest one I've moderated, so thank you for that. And also very, very useful and helpful. My favorite
Okay,
line...
why don't you only point at him for the second part?
Oh, that was great too. I feel like the best line from tonight, healthcare is a very humbling journey, so I get, for everyone here in healthcare, I really appreciate both of you just being so honest and open. So thank you so much. And as Danny said earlier, here at Workbench, we love not even the 0 to 1. We love the 0 to 0.25, 0.5 journey, and figuring out all this early shit. So we'd love to chat with you. And we have more drinks, more food, if you guys want to hang out for a little bit. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. Our next New York Enterprise Tech Meetup, July 15th, and actually focused on dev tools and infra. So stay tuned for more of that. And thank you so much again, guys. Really, really appreciate it. We have to give them a chance for a commercial, quick commercial from both of you.
We're hiring engineers, so find the awkward, weird guys here. Go talk to them. Just kidding.
Yeah.
That's Chris. That's Chris. That's our. Anyways, not doing so well tonight.
You're killing it.
And then the other thing, sorry, one more thing. Go to the Tennr LinkedIn, like the FactSet commercial. It helps boost engagement. It's a great commercial. It's weird. Watch it. 2 minutes. Send it to your family in medicine. They'll love it.
Akash.
And we're hiring in product.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.